Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 20th of April 2024. It's actually the one for the 19th. This should have been done yesterday, that's why I'm doing it first thing today. I was unable to do any videos last night because I had to go out to a local cricket club quiz where last year we came second. Actually came first, but there was some ringer from South Africa that some steward's inquiry anyway. Should have been a steward's inquiry. We came second. We're hoping to improve this year, come first. We came third. Picture round let us down. Absolute shocker. Anyway, too many beers later, here I am. So here is the lines on what my map, what they mean, the key. Pause it if you've never seen my maps before. Remember, these are all Russian defensive lines from 3 different mappers. We do not show the grey zone or the Ukrainian defensive lines. There'll be too many lines. Okay. No change to the northeastern axis, Kupiansk to Svatova to Crimea. That is exceptionally good news for the Ukrainians. No change to the Seversk front line for Bilohorivka down to Vasily. No change to Chaziv Yar, Ivaniska, Bakhmut area. That is incredibly good news. In fact, it all seems to be happening in the lower part of the Donetsk eastern front line. We have, I'm unfortunately not dipping into the Institute for the Study of War, just a matter of time. But here we have some bad news for the Ukrainians in the Russians really pushing forward in Novokonyovo and along the railway line up to Ocheretny. The Russians seem to be sort of pushing in many places to find these weaknesses, and they will exploit them until they can exploit them no more, until it becomes a little bit more difficult, and they seem to then press somewhere else. So you saw the Avdiivka front line. They pressed and pressed until they got up to the Derna River, and it appears that they have shifted their emphasis to the north now, to somewhere else that's easier, because the topography here with the river and then the higher ground to the west means that they would find it much more difficult to push on further. They'd have to get mechanized equipment across the river. That's just going to be a bit of a tough call. So they are probably sensibly attacking in other places where they don't have to contend with those challenges. Interesting that here we have Ukrainians gaining in Badichi, as according to Surat maps. My guess is that's probably admitting that the Russians had never actually got as far as they had initially claimed. So they'd have claimed all the way along here. The Surat map claimed that the Russians had taken pretty much the village along the, I guess, the very early course of the Derna River, this source area looks like to the river. But yeah, I think that's just seeing some evidence to suggest that the initial mapping was a little bit overzealous. But when we look to the north of there, it seems that all the mappers agree that the Russians are making those advances. We had Surat maps initially claiming an advance right to the edge of here, Ocheretny, actually pulling it a little bit back there, according to Surat maps. So either the Ukrainians did a counterattack, or they didn't quite have control. Again, a little bit overzealous on the mapping front. Deep State Maps also agrees that there's a bit of a pushback there. Fighting continues for an electricity substation in Ocheretny, according to Deep State Maps. So there's tough fighting over this, a little bit of rejigging of the Deep State map as well. So both of those two mappers admitting that the Ukrainians have either pushed back or the Russians didn't have consolidated control there. But now Andrew Perpetua also agreeing that the Russians are far up towards Ocheretny along this tree line. So that's bad news for the Ukrainians. The Russians definitely seeming to be making gains in that area, and fairly substantial gains according to Andrew Perpetua. But that's mainly sort of catching up and seeing the data to suggest that actually Surat maps was at least somewhat correct. If there's a little bit of rejigging going on in the very tip of the salient. Here we have around Novokonyovo, again the Russians advancing north and into the settlement proper. There's agreement from all the mappers that the advancing is going into the settlement of Novokonyovo itself. So yeah, challenging for the Ukrainians there. Due to this being a slightly late mapping session and early morning-ish for me, I am not bringing in any other sources to support these claims. We're just going on what JR has done in the mapping. Thanks, JR, mate, legend. We have Surat Maps claiming some advances towards Netalyove from Pervomaisky. A little bit worrying again. Russians just eking out further gains in a number of different places, but of course, take that claim with a pinch of salt. And then when we come down to Mariinka area on the way to Herivka, actually Andrew Perpetua seeing some evidence to suggest, and this is from a few days ago actually, that the Ukrainians had either pushed back there or the Russians hadn't fully taken control of that area. And of course that then casts all of these Surat Maps claims into some doubt there. So unless the Ukrainians have pushed back in the middle of the Russian control area from the south, if they are still in control further to the northwest of where this pin is, then I think Surat Maps is incorrect in their claims around there. So we'll have to wait to see what's going on there. But evidently, well, I'd say fierce fighting around Herivka. We haven't actually heard too much from here for some time. This has gone relatively quiet, and it's been much more about Krasnohorivka. No changes there, so that's good news for the Ukrainians, although there's no doubt really tough fighting there. And Novomykhailivka. But again, Novomykhailivka has gone pretty quiet recently. We have seen some changes to the north and to the south, but in the midst of Novomykhailivka, no change recently. Then we have some changes going on to the I guess north of Volodymyrivka here, right in that corner of the Donetsk front line. Andrew Perpetua says this isn't an advance. I just never had much information about what's going on here, and that's the same for all of these pins, as you can see. So this is more an agreement with the other mappers, and he's finally seen some information to confirm that the Russians do indeed control most of that ground there. So that's good news that the mappers all generally agree now, although Russian gains slightly in an area along one of these sort of tree lines in that region. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Sorry, doorbell interruption. Glasses have reacted to the sunlight, and that's where we are. And actually, that's where we finish, because there are no changes to the southern front line, no changes to the Dnipro River at all. Probably information to share with you, but I haven't seen that without looking at the Institute for the Study of War daily report. But you can see that there's a few different colour pins, which is good news, but it's mainly around the Avdiivka area, both north and south. That there is movement. I wouldn't put too much store into anything further south of Avdiivka today, at least. So that's the frontline update for yesterday, the 19th or 20th, and no doubt there'll be another one later today. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. Toodle pips.